what's the main challenge that you're dealing with right now you're looking for help with? Anxiety and stress? Okay. Okay, so what tends to trigger it usually? Health or sickness. Let's go ahead and create a table or a grid. Okay, it's going to be 3 columns, and then I'm going to have you draw 4 rows. So what you're experiencing is what we would typically just refer to as health anxiety, essentially. So the top left box we're going to go ahead and leave blank. Top center box we're going to go ahead and label as health anxiety. And then I'm assuming that what you'd like to feel instead would be something like content, maybe. So we're going to label the top right box with content. So the first big thing to understand is that emotions are not random. Anxiety is not random. It feels that way sometimes. It feels like, you know, it just comes out of the blue and you have essentially like no control over it or anything like that. But really, it's something where you can learn what it is that's actually causing it. There are 3 distinct causes for anxiety or feeling content. Any emotion has 3 causes, and that's what these rows represent. Okay, so I'll show you what each one of those are, and we'll help you start to learn how to minimize the amount of time that you're feeling anxious and maximize the amount of time that you're feeling content. Here's what I want you to do, okay? Go ahead, close your eyes for a second. Take a nice deep breath in through your nose, like a full breath in through your nose, nice and easy. And then exhale out through your mouth. I should be able to hear you. Okay, one more nice inhale in through the nose, fill your lungs entirely. Then a full exhale. Keep your eyes closed. And now I want you to remember a time when you were feeling really content. What's the memory that's coming to mind where you were feeling really content in the past? So what I want you to do is I want you to imagine that you are right back in that moment, right now. Okay, so imagine you're back in your body, you're seeing what you were seeing, you're hearing what you were hearing, maybe your mom like congratulating you. You remember like all of the special little details of that moment that just made it really special for you. What do you remember thinking to yourself in that moment? You accomplished something, your parents are proud of you, hard work paid off. And what do you remember like focusing on or fixating on in that moment? So you were imagining a good version of the future, like the program changing your life. So here's what I want you to do, okay? I'm gonna help you decode what's going on. So you've got these 3 rows. The very first thing that impacts how we feel emotionally is what our mind focuses on. So the title for that first row is going to be focus/deletion. So what does that mean? What that means is that as you go through your daily life, your mind is selectively focusing on certain things. And whatever it is that you're focusing on is going to determine how you feel essentially at that given moment. So like right now, if I have you go ahead and focus on your body temperature, you just think about like how you feel in terms of your body temperature right now. Okay, whether you feel hot or cold. Okay, then all of a sudden you might become aware of that, whereas before, you know, it might have been a little bit of a challenge for you to isolate that, right? Like you wouldn't have been feeling it so much. What we just did is we brought your focus through like 4 different things. And every single change that we made in your focus created a change in how you feel. The first big takeaway that you want to get here is that focus equals feeling. So any type of a change in your focus will create a change in feeling. It's the very first lever that determines how you're going to feel. It's like the first filter in your brain that will determine how you feel. It's what you focus on. There are very predictable things that cause people to feel health anxiety, and there are very predictable things that we can focus on that will make you feel content or confident or motivated or whatever it is that you really would like to feel. The trick is training the brain to focus on the things that make you feel how you do want to feel instead of focusing on what is going to make you feel bad. Most people who have some type of an anxiety issue, they're so used to their mind automatically pushing them in that direction of focusing on what's going to make you feel bad that we tend to assume that, oh, well, I just can't control it, right? Like, that's just how it is. But it's more so like a muscle. It's something that you have to work on. You have to strengthen it. And there are exercises that can train your brain to focus the way that you want it to focus, by default, in fact. And that doesn't mean you're ever going to be like perfect, but you can get to a spot where by default your mind is focusing on what makes you feel good instead of by default focusing on what makes you feel bad. because that's how the anxiety even popped up in the first place. Like, you didn't come out of the womb having health anxiety. Like, you, especially if you add legitimate medical issues, like you told me before, that's very common. Like, you have a medical issue, particularly if it's serious and if it's surprising, and then what happens is your mind develops a new mental pattern as an adaptation to try to prevent a similar thing taking place like this. And so your mind essentially goes, wait a minute, that unexpected medical thing that came up, that was really, really painful and surprising and scary, and I really don't want that to take place again. So what we need to do is we need to anticipate that taking place again. So what are we going to do? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to imagine the future going badly. We're going to try to guess what could go wrong first, so that way we can create a plan and we can mitigate it. Right? So anxiety arises as an adaptation. It's a pattern that has a good intent. It's trying to help you. It's trying to serve you. It's just outlived its usefulness. Maybe it was useful to you back then when you were going through all the medical shit and you needed, like, you needed a way to, just be on guard, I guess, right? But you're essentially, you're mostly past that point now. And I mean, even though you are taking care of your health, you're checking what it is that needs to be checked, the mental pattern of constantly anticipating the future is just getting in the way. It's not helping you anymore. Right? It's like a muscle that's been overgrown. Here's what we want to write down, okay? So on the table, on your health anxiety box for the focus box, I want to show you your exact pattern that's activating your health anxiety. Firstly, there's several bullet points here, so make sure you leave room. But the first bullet point there is you're focusing on the future. Almost all anxiety takes place when we anticipate and focus on the future. But you can only feel anxiety if you're focusing on a future that you fear. So we call it future plus fear. Focusing on the future that you fear is just one of an infinite number of combinations of things you could focus on that would make you feel better. So for example, when you focused on a person that you love, part of you felt happiness. When you focused on a moment in the future that you desired, you felt a sense of like happiness and maybe a sense of like eagerness, like excitement perhaps. When you focused on what you have to do in the near future, you felt a little bit of stress. So when we change the focus, it creates a certain predictable change in emotion, okay? So future plus fear, but then your nervous system is wired to be a visual first nervous system. What that means is that your mind firstly makes pictures, and then you create auditory language that goes on top of the pictures. So what this means is you can actually learn how to control the pictures that your brain is making. And so when you made that visualization of seeing yourself sick and being in the hospital, that did not go so well, right? You immediately felt anxious. The reason why you felt anxious is because to the human nervous system does not know the difference between what you vividly imagine and then what is actually real. So when you vividly imagine something going badly, then we tend to believe that, well, that's just how it's going to go, and then we tend to take actions that lead us down that path. But the opposite is just as true. So one thing that you can start to do, this is a very practical, simple tool. You have to start to visualize things going how it is that you want them to go, being healthy, getting the career that you want, having the future take place that you want. That is going to take a little time, it is going to take a little practice, but if you simply challenge yourself to do that, you will get better at making sure that the mind defaults to creating positive anticipatory images of the future instead of negative anticipatory images of the future. Now for you, you create these in still pictures as opposed to movies. And what we also know is that it's a series of different images. So if you can come up with like 2 or 3 different positive images for what it is that you actually want for your future, that will be something that your brain can kind of latch onto. And you can train yourself to go, no, this is how I want my health to be in the future. This is how I want my career to be, etc. I'll give you another little tool you can use too, is you can get your brain to focus in a different direction by changing the question that you ask yourself. So like, for example, a common question that you seem to be asking yourself right now is like, well, what if ... Like, what if something bad happens? Or what if it's this? Or what if it's that? those questions change your focus. Those questions cause you to scan your body looking for proof that there's a problem and believing that there is a problem when there very often probably isn't one. So instead, if you were to ask yourself, how do I want the future to go? And you introduced that new line of thinking on a regular basis, it's going to cause your brain to literally rewire itself, okay? Or at least start to do so. And then the last thing I'll share with you here as well is that there's a part of your brain that we call it the RAS, or it's called the reticular activation system. So it becomes trained to notice things that may not even fully be there. Okay, so for example, in the room that you're in, what I'd like you to do is go ahead and look for the color red. Try to find every instance of the color red that you can find. Okay, now close your eyes for a second and try to remember what you saw that was blue with your eyes closed. Does that seem really challenging? Now open your eyes and look for blue this time. Chances are you're going to see some more blue, right? But you didn't see it the first time, did you? So what happens, this is why we call it focus and deletion, okay? Because when you're focused on that person that you love, you're deleting your to-do list from your brain. When you're focused on the to-do list, you're not thinking about your health. When you're constantly obsessing over your health, you're forgetting about everything else in your life. So this is why we say problems need energy to grow. And did you notice that when you were scanning for red, you maybe saw some things that were not quite red, maybe they were like pink or orange or something like that, but you were like, oh, that's almost red. That right there, hear me now really closely, that right there is exactly what's happening with you and your health anxiety. You're scanning your body, looking for proof that there are issues where there probably are not issues. You're interpreting just basic sensations inside of your body as symptoms, but they're not symptoms, they're sensations. Because when you're looking for red, you're gonna see pink and then you're gonna think it's red. So I work with people with health anxiety all the time. So like what will happen is, I remember this one lady I helped years ago get over her health anxiety. She like thought she had MS, and what it really was she just like would feel like she was working out all the time. So she, you know, her muscles would ache a little bit. She'd feel a little numbness here or there. Her legs would feel a little wobbly, you know, basic, simple stuff, right? But she kept thinking, oh, I've got MS, I've got MS, I've got MS, even though she'd been tested for it like 3 times. So you got to train your brain to be on the hunt for information that will actually serve you.